I'd like to call to order the January 25th public hearing for the City of Tampa's Barrio Latino Commission. Welcome everyone. I'm Rich Simmons, Chair of the Commission. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, wall sections. Staff presents a staff report. We will then ask for public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be asking questions in the same order as the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly for the record if you are here to speak for or against the project, because your time will be limited to 3 minutes. So take some time now to summarize your comments, because 3 minutes goes by pretty quickly. Following the public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and make their decision based on the city ordinance, chapter 27 of the city zoning code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of Interior standards, design review comments, and the testimony given at this public hearing. The BLC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner agents are independently responsible for obtaining any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones. And we'll start with the introduction of my commissioners, starting on my left.
Liz Welch.
John Thompson.
Good morning, I'm Leaving Wynn.
Okay, and from staff, we have Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Beverly Jusak, and Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from City Legal. Okay. Everyone has the meeting minutes in their packet in front of them. Are there any changes or comments?
Mr. Chair, Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. I just want to make one change to the agenda. It does have the incorrect date of the minutes on the agenda. The minutes are correct on the actual copy of your minutes. It is December 21st, 2021.
Okay, so that's just on the agenda that the date changes.
Correct.
So the minutes are labeled December 21st. Let's see, are there any comments on the minutes?
Nope.
I think, if there are being no comments, we're gonna have the comments stand by unanimous consent. Is that okay? Do you want us to take a vote on this?
Yeah.
All right.
Motion to approve the minutes from December 21st, 2021.
Second.
All in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes and minutes carry. Okay, Mr. Fernandez.
Good morning, Commissioners. Welcome to our first hearing of the new year. I did want to once again thank everybody for their continued participation in these very robust times of development. I know it's been challenging for everybody to make the meetings, and we definitely appreciate it. Just briefly, I do have the administrative approvals to enter into the record from the last month. I'll provide those to the clerk for inclusion in the minutes. And I believe with that, we are ready to move on to conflicts of interest and ex parte communication disclosure with our legal counsel.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Since we're all wearing masks, I know our visual department will appreciate us speaking as loud as possible into the microphone, just to ensure that our voices are being recorded and everything is heard properly. With that, are there any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are on the agenda? Additionally, can the commissioners please state whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding any of the items on the agenda? Seeing none for the record. Thank you so much.
We do not have any conflicts or continuations on the agenda for this morning. I did want to request, since we are wearing masks, that when motions are made and votes are taken, that we do that both audible and with a show of hands. That will help us to keep an accurate record. With that, we'll move on to the swearing. Anyone in the public who is going to be providing testimony, please stand and raise your right hand. It includes staff. And with that, we're ready for our first case that Ron will introduce.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. The first case this morning is BLC 22-57. This is for the address of 1805 East 4th Avenue. Currently, that's a vacant parcel. The zoning attached to that parcel is YC7. The request this morning is for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction for a duplex with site improvements. The structure is approximately square footage about 3,700 square feet, and there was no previous action on this parcel. It was used as an overflow parking lot. If we could move to the photo presentation at this time. On your monitors, you have the Sanborn map from 1929. Property in question is highlighted in this green area here. It is a corner parcel on the corner of 4th Avenue and Angel Oliva Senior Street, which is also known as 18th Street. Just looking at the environment in the early 1900s, you see a series of duplexes to the east of the subject site. They will show up on my photo presentation. These are one-story structures. There is no alley behind the subject site. And across the street, there is some development happening here. There's new construction of a structure that's approximately the same size of the request this morning, and a dog park on the corner that will be part of the presentation as it moves forward. This is the vicinity map, just so you get an understanding exactly where it's at in the overall local historic district. It's on the lower quadrant. It's here, 4th Avenue once again, and Angel Oliva Senior Street. Looking from above, you see the context and the fabric that's currently there today. Just to the south has been a project that's been approved. This is kind of an amendment to what has already been approved. Subject site, once again, is on 4th Avenue and Angel Oliva Senior Street. This is looking back at the vacant parcel. This is looking from 4th Avenue to the south. This is looking from Angel Oliva Senior Street to the east. This is one of the duplexes I spoke about on the Sanborn map that's illustrated. And the side elevation, which is the west elevation of that duplex. This is a shot looking down 4th Avenue. It's a very generous street with some parallel parking on each side, the north and the south. You see the row of the duplexes here. You see the roof lines and some new construction across 4th Avenue to the north. This is looking down 4th Avenue to the west, the continuation of the parallel parking to assist with some of the parking pressures that are there. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the across the street, across 4th Avenue to the north. This was reviewed and approved by this board, and they're breaking ground now and moving some dirt. This is directly to the south of the subject site. And just a series of street shots down Angel Oliva. There is no parallel parking. It's more of a tighter street. But you see the environment here. You see the sidewalks and then the parkway as it's defined. And this is looking across 4th Avenue, down Angel Oliva, back towards 7th Avenue. You see the granite curbing, the parkway, and the sidewalks, how it's instrumental in the circulation for the pedestrian in this urban environment. That concludes my photo presentation, and I'll have the agent address the board at this time.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time this morning. My name is Fadi Garcia. I'm with Open Workshop for Architecture, and I will be presenting today what we are calling for now the 4th Avenue Duplex project. Just to get everyone a little bit situated, this is an interesting site. If you recall, last year we came in front of this board to review another project, which is the 3rd Avenue apartment project under BLC 2162. And this project today, which we're presenting, it's what would be considered almost a phase 2 of that project. So we've allocated the parcel that's at the corner of 4th Avenue and Angel Oliva in the efforts to try to complete the development of Fourth Avenue, which is actually developing quite nicely. So what you see in front of you here as labeled as A is the project that I'll be presenting today. B is the project that came in front of the board last year. Lot 1 is a surface parking lot, which is a proposed parking lot with approximately 42 parking spaces. And Lot 2 is an alternate parking lot, also controlled by the development team, currently under review for the design exception, so that we are meeting our 1-to-1 parking ratios for both projects. Here's a closer look at the development in relationship to the project that was presented last year. So you can see the relationship with that building. We will have, as I said, a duplex, so we'll have dedicated parking, 2 parking spots for our duplex right at that location shown on the slide. And here's just a quick aerial to show the transition of scale and transition of typologies as we move closer to 7th Avenue. You see Lot B is going to be a 5-story building. It relates to already the massing along that 3rd Avenue corridor. And as we move closer to 4th Avenue, the scale starts getting reduced to a more residential type scale, which is the approach we'll be taking with this project. Thought this was an interesting slide to show on the Sanborn map. As Ron mentioned earlier, these are duplexes to the east of our property, but at the corner you see how the direction of the mass of the buildings change to be oriented east-west. We're going to be respecting that same orientation. Also, the building was slightly set forth, a little bit forward or proud of the buildings to the east. So we're also going to be respecting that. And in terms of the massing, it's very similar to what was originally historically in that intersection. Here's another quick look in relationship to the buildings to the east. Our footprint is almost exactly the same as those duplexes to the east. We're using as reference, really our main driver for the design is going to be the historical casitas, the cigar factory workers' house. We're not obviously replicating this because we have a two-story structure, but we're definitely taking some strong cues from that historical reference, including a front porch condition, again to really activate the pedestrian experience along 4th Avenue, which is developing quite nice. Also along 4th Avenue, we've added two projects that are relatively new. To the bottom of the screen, it's another multifamily project just west of our property, and then to the right is another townhouse project that's kind of catty corner right across from our site. Although the front of that project is at a lower scale, as you move back, it actually maximizes the height that's allowed on that street. Here's a quick view, rendered site plan of our project in relationship to everything else going on in that intersection. At the top, you see the park that's currently under construction, with the building as well. That's, I believe, was already starting to go up. Our scale and detailing matches this building. We're trying to actually relate more to this building so that as you're in the park, basically you have a similar experience as you go around. And both of these buildings are going to start framing the park quite nicely, almost like a little mini plaza at the intersection. You see also right next to the park building, there's a 1-story historic casita building, very similar to scale to the building that's going to be next to our project as well. Just a closer look at the site plan, just to show the dedicated parking spot area, some of the landscaping locations that is going to be proposed, the trash area location, and also the condensing unit location, which would be buffered by vegetation as well, so you won't really see that from the main street. We're also trying to stay consistent with the spacing of the buildings to the west, so we have roughly about a 7-foot distance between the buildings, so really setting our building back along the east property line, about a 3-foot setback on that side. And as you know, in YC7, we actually have 0 setbacks requirements, but we're trying to also, again, stay consistent with what was historically there, and keeping a consistent rhythm along that street. Here's a closer look at the floor plan, just so that you understand how the building is being accessed. So we're setting the front porch back about 8 feet from the north property line. The porch is going to be a 7-foot deep porch, so that it's truly a comfortable, habitable porch. Again, the idea is to try to engage 4th Avenue, have a stronger engagement with 4th Avenue. And here's just a quick view at the 2nd story view. As you see, we are also adding to pay some attention to the rear of the building, because it's also going to be experienced as you walk down Angel Oliva, and is going to be experienced by the building that's behind us. So we didn't really want to treat it as the back of a building, but we wanted to put some effort into that, the design of that facade as well. It also helped with the proportions of the building and keep the proportions correct as we move to the elevations. So at the top of the screen is the rear setback, and, sorry, not the rear setback, the rear elevation. And as you see, we're, through architectural detailings, we're also trying to reduce the scale and create a distinct division between 2 units. And at the front, we're also breaking that front porch roof line, again, to create that kind of distinction, reduce the scale. The idea is also try to keep that scale, or the perception of the scale of the building along the north facade a little bit lower, so that it has a better relationship to the buildings to the west as well. Here's a quick comparison slide of our building elevation. It's at the center. To the left is the building elevation, or partial elevation, of the dog park commercial structure that's being built right now, or mixed-use structure, I'm sorry. Just some further detailing here, just zooming into some of the details on the elevation of our project. We're trying to stay very symmetrical with our design. You see in section, again, it's going to be a wood frame building with lap siding material for the exterior cladding, metal standing seam metal roof. The building's going to be mostly a white skin color with some very selected color selections for, like, the entry point, for example, all within the color palette of the district. Just as a quick overview of some of the window detailing, door detailing, and the wood railing detailing, again, just for our reference, and we can discuss more about these details if you guys want during the question session. Here's our material palette board, just the type of light fixtures that we're looking at using, the lap siding, the colors, the window designs, and some of the exterior lighting design sconces. Here's the color palette currently for the district, and we're kind of living within these 3 colors for our project. And now, it's just renderings of what we're envisioning this project to look like. So this is a view looking back at the north facade. We're proposing to have a very low knee wall at the front to kind of differentiate the front yard. This is, again, taking cues from what is historical seen around the neighborhood. Here's that rear facade. You see how, as you're walking up Angel Oliva, you really get an experience. You really get to experience that facade. There's a closer look at the front entry. We're proposing to use a shellcrete material for the entry, for the slab, as you enter into the property. Create a differentiation between materials on the sidewalk and the materials used to enter the building. And here's a closer look at just the experience at that front porch looking back at Fourth Avenue. And that concludes my presentation to you guys today. If there's any questions?
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Avila, staff with Historic Preservation. The request this morning is for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction for the duplex with some site improvements. Staff finds that this application is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines with plans that we reviewed on February 2nd. On the plans that we reviewed, there seems to be some changes. Excuse me, and that was on January 2nd. There were some changes to the plans that were illustrated this morning, but to briefly go through the conditions that I had previously and that are reflected on your staff report, is additional information should be provided for elevation from grade to show consistency with the existing block and the historic fabric and the setbacks. Initially, the depth of the porches were not sensitive to the environment. I believe he's increased the depth of the porches, and he could illustrate the dimensions of the porches currently. The parking solution has been satisfied. In the presentation, he talked about the transition from the sidewalk to the front steps in some kind of shell material. Historically, that would have been a concrete scored appropriately. The guardrail around the front porch is illustrated through drawings and through his renderings, but additional information on that as well to show the dimensions of the pickets and the structural elements. The door package was modified from when I reviewed it to what was presented today. What we reviewed initially was a single door with a single side light that is not typical of Ybor City. So the presentation today, he had a central door with two flanking side lights, one side light on each side, which is more period appropriate. We talked about the installation of additional windows on the rear elevation. It kind of conflicted with the floor plan, but if you look at the lower level of the rear elevation, maybe it's a discussion point for the board. Additional discussion should take place on the trim around the windows and doors. The windows on the blow-up section that he has, the casings are appropriate except for the bottom. That traditionally you have a 2-inch sill. What's illustrated here is more of a picture frame. And then to review the roof, he broke down the massing of the roof on the first floor by separating it so it's 2 individual units as you go in. It still has a very heavy total roof on the structure on the second level. So maybe he can introduce some elements there to break up that roof massing. And then to go into the section, there was a illustration of a standing seam roof. If standing seam is to be used in the historic district, it should be a 1-inch profile or less. That concludes staff's portion of the staff report, and I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vila. Is anyone here from the public in the audience would like to comment on this? Please step forward. Seeing none, we're gonna start asking some questions of the applicant, starting with Commissioner Welch on my left.
Right now, I don't have any.
Morning.
Morning.
To address one of the questions that Ron had, so what is the depth of the porch on the north facade?
It is 7 feet to the inside of the column.
Okay, and what's the depth of the side yard on the west?
The side yard,
Do you have a setback there?
the setback is 3 feet from the west property line. 3 feet.
3 feet. Okay. And the elevation of the finished floor from the surrounding?
We are 18 inches above.
And how does that relate to the casitas to the east?
So the The duplexes to the east are actually a bit higher at 24 inches, but due to the scale of our building being 2 feet, we thought that that was actually making this, putting us a little bit out of proportion to go up another foot to match that. So we're actually relating more to the building across the street. Some of the buildings across the street, most of those are actually at 18 inches above. Right.
Can you bring that plan back up with
Sure.
the site plan for the other building?
Actually, this is probably one of the most telling ones. Is this the site plan you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, so you can see you can see the 7-foot porch there projecting off of your project.
Right.
And the 3-foot setback, are we seeing the property line there on the west?
Yes, there's the property line right here.
To the west, though?
Oh, to the west, oh, sorry, the west side is actually just over a foot on the west side.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, one of my observations is that, you took in the presentation, the orientation of the building that was facing the west and used that roof pitch to site the building, and then provided the porches off of the side that they weren't ever historically on. And I was just trying to figure out if there's enough room to wrap a porch around that north-south road, similar to what you're referring to at the dog park, or, but it looks like you're really pressed for space there, because you've taken the entries and made them on the side of the building that wouldn't have normally had entries, right?
Yeah, what we did was we kind of backed into the project. So obviously, we're trying to, originally, when we were presenting the first project last year, we were trying to create the access to the surface parking.
Mhm.
So obviously, there's some minimum distances we're trying to maintain there.
Right.
So we squeezed that as much as we could to the south, but we got to a point where we just couldn't get any more depth out of that lot. So, and the development team really wanted to, from a development standpoint, complete the block because of everything that's happening around it. So yes, we're really, really pressed with space, and we actually did look at multiple options, one of which was looking at a porch facing west. But what happened was, then the duplex that was on the interior of the building was just not it just didn't have this, it didn't enjoy the same amenities that in that one corner one did. So we're trying to create a similar experience for both units.
Mm-hmm. They're the same thing, right?
Yeah, they're exactly the same, just mirrored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So with the orientation and the kind of where it is on the west property line, you don't even have any room to put any kind of sunshades or anything on that side of on that elevation. Can you
Yeah,
show us
we're really trying to stay away from having to request any encroachments in the building, so we're really trying to respect that property line there. The other thing that's important to note is that, obviously you have the dog park in the corner, which is great for the district, but it isn't really also a historical relevant program. But since it is going up, we thought it would be good to also pay some attention to that. We thought it would be important for the building to somehow engage the park as well.
Well, I like the porches, and you can see them on this image here of the dog park building, where it kind of wraps around and it goes, on 3 sides of the project, and the project that you're proposing kind of, parks up alongside that as best it can, and has porches that engage one street. I was just trying to figure out from the presentation if there was the ability to get more porches.
Yeah, I can bring up here's the first floor plan. I think it gives a little bit more. I know I just kind of went through this quickly.
Yeah.
But you could see that we're really kind of pressed with space. And
Yeah, those are my questions. You
Can you go back to the other image, the site plan that you're on?
This one or this image?
Yeah. I'm good.
That's it?
Yep.
That's it?
I'll come back.
I reserve the right.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing in the southeast are the condensing units, they're tied in underground to the building, is that
Correct.
correct? Could you pull up the elevations, for the building? Talk about, we can let you work with staff for some details like the, you know, the height of the standing seam roof, all that kind of stuff. So it looks like, so I guess just from the elevations and the renderings, the windows look quite a bit different, and the trim around them, the mullion widths, for the, you know, for the integral mullion in between also looks quite a bit different from the elevations and the renderings. So I'm assuming, are the elevations what we should go off for, sort of the window details, in this regard? Because I think the rendering showed sort of what you would find in a more typical house, when, I guess not.
No, they're the same. I think it's
Same,
just the
okay.
perspective view.
Yeah.
When you look at them in perspective and elevation.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Quite as different as I kind of thought. All right. So maybe I don't have any picture questions on the windows as much then. But let's see. Maybe come back to me then as well. I don't think I have much else.
I'll go. All right, so, to follow up on Levy's comment about the windows, the proportions have certainly changed since the preliminary package that we saw. The double windows seem a little bit more appropriate for their scale and their massing here. Can you talk about why we kind of change our rhythm here? Like on the front facade, you've got a single, you know, it's a 1-2-2-2, you know, and then mirrored back. I don't know if I see that being necessary. Is there a distinct reason for doing that? I don't
It's
know.
really how the program is shaping out. And so it's a direct response to what's happening inside the building. So how the floor plan is being laid out. So if you look at the second level floor plan, we do have a walk-in closet in that corner. And the way it was, originally we did have the same windows throughout the entire facade, but it's just how the program worked out. We couldn't properly fit the double windows at the corner. So we switched back to a single window, which we thought was appropriate since as the building, as you turn that corner, you're also going back to a single window on the west facade as well. So we placed most of the focus on trying to keep the facade as symmetrical. So we were, so you see here in the west, as it turns, it goes back to a single window rather than a double window.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a big improvement from the preliminaries. I mean, I think the scale of the windows is more appropriate. I just wanted to understand if there was a particular reason for changing this, but I think it offers a nice play of the rhythm there too. So your standing seam metal roof, Ron had mentioned that 1 inch is typically more historically compatible. Is that a 1 inch standing seam?
Yeah, we could, you know, we didn't specifically call out what we're doing here,
Right.
but you know, we'll make sure it matches what's historically compatible here. So the same thing goes with the sill of the windows. We'll make sure to work with Ron to make sure that we can adjust that to the appropriate size as
Okay.
well.
And what are your roof slopes here?
So we have a slope. It is, sorry,
Yeah, it's
can't
really
see that.
pixelated.
11-to-1, I think. Which again, it matches the same, it's the same roof slope as the building across the street.
Okay, and what about the roof slope on the porch?
It is 5-to-1.
And that matches the dog park building?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, I think can you go back to the double elevations? Yeah. And let's talk about the, yep, that, it looks like that, it looks like a stair behind on the rear elevation between the two units. What is that?
This louver, it's just a louver system.
Is it wood, metal?
It's a wood louver, yeah, wood louver
Like
system.
a
Like a,
Bermuda shutter kind of thing?
no, it'll be fixed. It's just, you know, if you look at the second floor plan, the balconies at the second floor are also separated.
Mm-hmm.
So it just helps, as a detail to break the length of the facade on that side. We wanted to add a detail that still allowed for, breeze to come through, but, somehow differentiated where the units were kind of split.
Okay, yeah, I think that's appropriate. I think one thing that, I think these elevations have gotten better than the preliminaries that we saw. The roof mass seems rather large, and I mean, that's on Fourth Avenue. You know, I understand the design decisions that you made there to rotate the building and optimize the views, and I think that's a good decision there. Was there any conversation or discussion about breaking up the continuous mass of that roof? Maybe dormers or a break or?
Yeah, we definitely explore that. The first thing we tried was splitting the roof, actually creating a separation at the middle, and that really threw off the scale of the mass. Now it became more like two squares, which is not. We really didn't see anything that kind of related to that in the district. We also looked along Fourth Avenue and didn't notice any buildings with dormers along Fourth, so that's another thing. And we also didn't really want to add dormers that weren't functional. So we did look at an option where we could inhabit that third floor, but again, the space inside the building didn't allow for a stair. So we explored that extensively, and we actually ended up with we thought was the best option, which was splitting the first floor roof. And if you look back at the renderings, you know, even though I know in elevation it seems, obviously it seems higher than you actually would perceive that roof. So we were really also trying to focus on maintaining a good proportion on the west facade, since it was going to be so exposed. So we didn't want to create a low pitch roof, because then that facade, I think, will look would not be appropriate, again, for just the general massing that you see along the district.
Yeah, and I think maybe the additional texture of the seams might tend to break it up a little bit more. I think it's more palatable than the preliminaries that, I mean, I shouldn't say palatable. I mean, I think this looks nice. What's the total length of that roof length?
So the building length, I'm not sure, actually, I have a slide here for that.
Ballpark? I mean,
Oh, here it is,
60
69 feet.
70 feet
Yeah.
with overhangs, yeah. Okay. Could you talk about probably the elevations, maybe the wall section, your front entry stoop there? How are you detailing that? Is there like an approach coming down to the sidewalk? Is it a transition, or is it just kind of everything's on the building? But yeah, your wall sections are probably.
So actually, I think this
You have
shows
a knee
it.
wall out front.
Yeah, so we have a low knee wall at the front. I would say it's like 16 inches. The corners are pronounced. We're capping them with a concrete cap. And the, the steps transition outside of the building as well. So I don't know, is that the question? Was that the question? I don't know if I.
Yeah,
answered that
generally, this is a good view, better than the sections, to see how that works, and I think that's an appropriate solution there. So from this rendering, I'm seeing exposed rafter tails for the low roof, the porch. Are those, those appear to be exposed underneath the porch as well, but nothing exposed on the eave for the main roof?
Correct. Actually, let's see if we have a good view of that. Let's go to this section. Yeah, so we will have a fascia board at the eave of the roof, and we'll have so the they really won't be exposed at the eave. We have a very small eave at the top. So you're correct. So they will be exposed at the lower roof, but not at the top.
Yeah, it's just that they become kind of pixelated, so it's kind of hard
Yeah.
to even see that, like going across there.
And you'll see here at the back, we will have a ceiling over that balcony.
And the gutters are, it's like a 6-inch half round.
Correct.
Go back to the
Yeah.
Galvin, okay. Roof, yes. Do you want to talk about your front door versus rear door?
Yeah, so as Ron mentioned, we actually originally had a single door with a side light, and in working with him, we figured that, it was, this actually turned out to be a better design. So we have a 3-foot door with two, I believe they're just over a foot of glass, side lights on either side. Now the rear door, since the parking's at the rear of the building, we had to also provide an access at the rear of the building just for convenience. So we're trying to, it's the same design as the front door minus the side lights. So if we go back to the floor plan, well, sorry, jumping back and forth here. Here we go. So you have, and there's a little bit of a elevation change too at the rear, which is, surprising for Florida. So we do have a little bit of a step that happens inside the building to go up into that space. So, but yeah, so the back door, the rear door is to match the design of the front door minus the side lights.
Yeah, no side lights or anything, it's just
Yeah.
a straight door, okay.
And we looked at introducing more windows at the rear, but really how the program was laying out, we just couldn't find any other spots to add any more windows, so you have the glass on the rear door, and then you do have a window which is inside the powder room, but as you can see on both sides of that, you have kitchen cabinets, and on the other side you have the stairs. So it was really difficult to introduce more additional windows at the rear.
Okay, could you go to the second floor plan for a second? Okay. Yeah, I think your window spacing and pattern, I don't have any issues with the 4 windows on the east and west. I think that works really well, and I think you've made some adjustments in this presentation to the scaling and the proportion of the windows, so I think that works very well. I don't have any other questions. Anything else? Okay. Well, I think we're done asking you questions. You have a few minutes, 5 minutes for any rebuttal or summary comments on your project, on your presentation.
No, again, thank you again for your time this morning. I mean, we're really excited about all the energy that's being put into this intersection particularly, but in this area of the district. So we're just very excited about this project as well. It's going to be a good transition into the center of the district. So again, thank you for your comments today.
Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing. We can now discuss the case amongst ourselves. Mr. Nguyen?
I think it's a very nice looking project overall. I think I'm comfortable with having, staff handle some details, like any details about railings, standing seam heights, finalizing, mullion widths and trim and all that kind of stuff. I think it will be a good looking project.
Yeah, I concur. I think it's well presented, and thank you for the time and effort you put into it. I know that we had kind of discussed this parcel in the past when we approved the prior version or the previous approval, and always kind of knowing that there might be a project to come here. So thanks for developing it with the owner. With respect to the roof proportions and the dormers, I really don't see a need to kind of break that up along the scale of this road. I think that the casitas to the east and their massing, those roofs are kind of similar to this roof, and I think it'll be a good addition to the corner and the park that's going along there as well.
I like the project. I think it's got some good, they've done a good job, and I appreciate the changes that you've made since the last time that it came to us. I'm okay. I don't have any more.
Yeah, I think, to kind of relay everyone's comments, I think this is, you know, well-designed. It's a modern interpretation of an Ybor-esque property done in a different way. So I think, you know, by turning it and rotating it and making the Fourth Ave your street front, that front slope porch at the front breaks down that street mass. So that kind of softens the pitch of that higher roof off. You know, I think especially when you look in this perspective, the pitch of the high roof is much greater than the casitas, but it's a different type of design element.
Yeah, and you're really only going to see that roof with the backdrop of all the other 5-story that's behind it.
Sure.
So it'll blend well from one to the other.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice modern interpretation of a historic precedent here. That's, you know, they've worked hard to work out the details. You know, the breaking up of the roof mass was one of my main concerns, but I'm much more comfortable with that now. And then fixing the window proportions, the numbering and rhythm there, fixing the front door, and you know, I think working with staff on some of the trim details for the window would be certainly be appropriate. You know, we didn't really get into all the trim details, but I think that's something that we can have them work with staff on, and they'll be sensitive to the historic nature there. And I think that kind of addresses all our issues, so we can entertain a motion, or we can have more discussion.
So move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in BLC 22-57 for the property located at 1805 East 4th Avenue. Because based on the finding of the fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Ybor City Design Guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reason. It matches the scale of the street and the context which in it is located. And then, let's see, but with the following conditions, that the applicant worked with city staff to finalize trim details, railing details, any other details I should add in there?
Final color palette.
And final color palette.
Works. You have to finish your motion here.
Oh, should I have that page? With following conditions, oh, because based on the fact of finding the proposed project, well, I think proposed project consistent with the Ybor City Guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons, that it matches the scale and massing of the street, and it takes its historical context into account.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of said motion, say aye.
And
Aye.
actually,
Wait.
before you put some conditions on the motion, can you ask the applicant to, whether or not he accepts the conditions?
I accept.
So we've added 3 conditions to work with staff on finalizing details. The applicant has agreed to these conditions, and so. Okay. All in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation, moving to the next case this morning, which is BLC 22-59. This is for the address of 1015 Lily White Court. Currently, there are a series of non-contributing structures that date back to 1969. The previous zoning was YC2. On page 3 of your staff report, there was some action that was taken in October of 21. This board recommended to City Council to approve the rezoning from YC2 to YC9. There were 2 conditions attached to that PD as it went forward to City Council and approved by City Council. One is that a note is added to the site plan to authorize the Barrio Latino Commission the ability to adjust the setbacks on all elevations for a distance up to 10 foot to enable the development of the building elements that characterize the Ybor City Historic District. And the second bullet item was to retain and reuse all historic brick pavers currently within the site boundaries. Along with that PD approval, some of the information that you usually review and move forward on have been addressed through the PD. Some of those items are the height and the width, the building facades, setbacks, and spacing and alignment. So a lot of that language has already been developed through the prior presentation. You do have the ability to alter that up to 10 foot, which was forwarded to City Council. So I wanted to put that into the record as well. Moving towards the brief photo presentation, there's a lot going on there. I think that looking from above was the easiest way to understand the subject site as we move forward. This is showing the property in question here. It goes up to Fourth. This is the non-contributing structures that I spoke about, and then it goes all the way to the southern boundary within the local district of Ybor City. This is just looking at a closer aerial of that, and this is 6th Avenue, not 4th, excuse me, 6th Avenue, and then it shows the fabric that was there in 1929, and you see the density that was there, and it had been removed in the early 60s for the development of the projects that were there now. Looking at the subject site, which is here, you have Lily White, and then you have Nucio to the east. You have Scott Street to the west, as it terminates at the southern boundary of the local district. Once again, looking at that subject site again, just a little closer. Moving to our vicinity map. This is a more current illustration. Here you have the series of non-contributing structures that are maintained in the subject site that will be removed as part of this request. And just looking at the structures that date back to 1969. There is some historic fabric that's in here, and that's part of the recommendation that went forward to City Council that historic material be retained. So as they go through the process, if there's any granite curbing or bricks, it should be inventoried and then discussed with staff of how that's going to be re-implemented back into the project. And that was just additional photos of a lot more of the same. So that concludes the photo presentation at this time. Ms. Gaines will address the board.
I'd just like to make before we do that, I'd like to make the commissioners, aware that this is a preliminary approval. So staff has kind of outlined some of the required things for preliminary approval that I think are within our purview before we, I think we need to be very conscious in mind of what's being looked at and approved for the preliminary, and we'll give them direction for the final as well.
Good morning, everyone. Stephanie Gaines with Kurtz Gaines Hall Architects. Left out a partner. Kurtz Gaines Hall Jones Architects. Michael Pilar with me, my right-hand man and everything. We are representing Kettler as architects for the W1 project before you. Now, I would like to, have you zoomed into that? I want to start by doing a little bit of orientation because, there's been a lot of publicity about this project and there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of pieces in different, processes, going through different processes. So just real quickly, this is an image from our PD package. The yellow area is generally the entire Gasworks projects, which, there's been a lot of publicity about. We were here before for PD, for W1 and W2. We were, let me zoom into the next page. This one. This is the actual PD plan that was approved. Let's move this down. Yeah, zoom out. That's great. And the blue line, we added some lines to this PD plan. The blue line is what city council approved as the PD. The red line, the southern red line is the historic Ybor City District boundary. And what you approved, what you reviewed and recommended is the area that is encircled in a red line. That's the area within the historic district. So that was the portion of the PD that you approved. And what we're here today to do is start the certificate of appropriateness review part 4, only one parcel, W1, which is the area shown in the black outline. There's a small portion of the southern piece, W2, that is within the district, but it's a separate project, separate timeline, separate architect. So we're just doing the northern part. So in case, there's some confusion as you go along. So going into the enlarged site plan for those 2 blocks. It's 2 blocks because we're starting with our development, and I'm going to review this quickly because this is all part of the PD, but I'm not sure if everyone was there, and there's a lot going on, so we're going to go through it quickly. This is the W1. We are starting with trying to mend the urban fabric by rebuilding Fifth Avenue and 4th Avenue, which align with those same roads on the east of Nick Nucio Parkway. We are working with the conditions that we have, around the property regarding setbacks. The northern parcel is privately owned. We would hope that to follow suit, that owner would rebuild 6th Avenue, but there's no commitment to that. And so we've shown a minimal setback there. That setback, while it's larger than 0, is because of a water main easement that we have there. So that's why we're pushed back, I don't know, between 8 and 12 feet from that property line. On the west is Scott Street. It's a school, kind of a neighborhood street. We have pushed our building forward to the property line with only some stepping in to allow for walkout units, so front entries for those units on the ground floor. To the south there's no street now, but we're building what we're going to call an active retail street. The whole southern side of W2 will be all retail, and we've got retail at the far right end of W1. Did I say W2 will be retail? W1 is shown in that dark green area in the corner. So that will be a very active retail street. And that leaves us with Nick Nucio, which is a very unusual street. We want to spend a little time with that. It's very wide. I think it's 100-foot wide right-of-way, and the city owns a large swath on the west side of that, which is just a greenway, a city park. So our roads that we are cutting through, 5th and 4th, will receive reciprocal easements through that park. And the other thing that's important about the Nucio frontage specifically is there's a significant grade change of 5 to 6 feet between the sidewalk essentially and the rest of the site. So we have come as close as we can to that edge, allowing ourselves enough room to protect save grand trees. One is on the north there, and we've carved out a space for that. We also have steps. Why don't you point to the steps on the north of who you want a pointer? On the north building. We have in order to get up to the buildings, we need some space for steps, so we've allowed for that area there. And then down on the south building, we've got outdoor we've got public areas. That dark green area is most of our amenities and our leasing office and that sort of thing. So we've got that corner entry at the north of that south building, and the light pale areas are outdoor social areas. And I'll show you something on the next page when we get to it. And just to identify that the entire north building is residential use. And it's carved in, it's got courtyards carved into it to create views and break down the massing. The southern building is, again, as I said, on the first floor, most of the semi-public amenity areas are along Nick Nucio. And then the parking for the entire project, both buildings, is flanked by more residential units on the left and the right, and overlooking an interior primary courtyard there. Okay, sticking with that Nick Nucio area, I just think this is something, before we get into the vertical elements, for everybody to understand. This is a drawing by the landscape architects that we're working with, Sasaki. And so this shows just a little bit more about the uses along Nick Nucio and that green area, leasing area there at the corner of the south building. There's a retail area at the southern end. So this is a public outdoor area. And this area in between is social and home office areas that have spill-out patios along that area too. And then on the north, we have a little private green space around the oak tree and our entrances into that. You can see from the renderings on this, well, they're pretty dark, but we are starting to solve the problem of grading with the low walls that can be found typically, so that we don't have a sheer, 6 foot, 8 foot wall there. We've started with a 2 foot low wall and then gentle grading up. Go ahead. There's a picture of that oak tree that we're talking about, and a little bit more detail. We've kind of seen it all, but let's zip through again. And then this shows a little more detail of the southern piece where those outdoor areas are created. This wall that's a little hard to see, but it is shown. It continues through the north and south parcel. It creates a geometry that follows the property line, and kind of creates an edge while the building steps in and out in straight lines that we follow at an angular line. You can see in the photograph there, our site is on the left, and it's hard to see from this that there is that much of a grade change, but across the entire property from Scott Street to Nick Nucio is a 10-foot grade change. This is just a little bit of detail on how we're handling that area. Sections down on the bottom, cutting through a planted area with a 24-inch wall, and then the grading up to the outdoor patios, and then a section through a typical stairway that would go up to that. The low walls, just considering some options there. These all attempting to blend that grade change so that we don't, again, look like we're sitting on a mountain. Now we're going to move into the building sections and details quickly. And as it's already been mentioned, we have, through the PD process, we understand, working with staff, that a lot of the site issues have been dealt with: orientation, massing, those sorts of things, except for the conditions that were put on the recommendation. So the next thing for us to do is look at architectural and site details, features, specific materials and colors. So that's the start of this process. This is a section, can you see the key plan? Yeah, the key plan is there on the right bottom corner. This is a building section through the north building on the left and the south building on the right. It shows that pedestrian bridge, which I haven't mentioned today, but that goes across that private new street, Fifth Avenue, to allow residents in the north building safe and secure access to the parking garage, which is entirely located on the southern portion of the property. So 4-story building on the left, 5-story building on the south. Those open areas below are just, we've cut through the building through the outdoor amenity areas that would join into the pool on the right-hand side. Couple more building sections. Again, the key plan down on the right. Looks like you're working with archive material there with your glove on. Can you zoom out a little more or pull it down? There you go. So on the upper section from the right to the left, I'll go with this. Nick Nucio there is the street out to the right of that building. There's a 4-story area in the center of the south building with a terrace above overlooking Nick Nucio, and then 5 stories of units beyond that look into an open courtyard with a pool area and the building behind it mirrored with more units. And then on the far left, units that are facing Scott Street. Both of those, you see the parking garage is reduced in width, in actual width to fit the page, but those units are concealing the parking garage that's in between. And the lower elevation, the lower section is also cut through Fifth Avenue at a different location, kind of close to Nick Nucio, where there's a 3-story section of the north building, and then 5 stories at the corner here of the south building. We feel like this, you know, one important thing in Ybor's architectural element is how the corners of buildings are emphasized. We wanted to be subtle about that because we didn't want to compete with nearby Historic Brewery, which is the tallest building in Ybor. But we feel like dropping this piece of the building on the north down helps accentuate that 5-story section of that corner. And then cutting through the rest of the building to 4th Avenue, where, you know, you can see that we have balconies, you know, on all the streets that are available to us. Okay, why don't you get you can put that up. No, put it on the thing. Sorry, get the board and put that up. So we have a sheet with all of the building elevations on it. And, sorry, just 1 second. And give these out to everyone. What that drawing doesn't have, though, and we're just going to keep it up for reference while we go through the details of the project, because the details are all kind of keyed in on this drawing, and Ron is handing out the key plan that's missing from that, just so you can understand what colors represent what materials. And I will do... I'll do one elevation. Well, that's my one with marked up. Well, that's all right, we'll just go through this one quickly. So the darkest of the, I don't want to call it orange, you know, it's hard to print the intent of the color, but that golden color, that the darkest one of those is a blonde brick that we're proposing at the moment, and then the very dark gray towers are a dark gray-black brick that we're proposing. The white is stucco. The score lines at the bottom of the south building elevations are an indented detail of brick that's got indentions every 24 inches, which we'll show you details of. The really dark, and there are different colors on each elevation, not intentionally, this and this. Those are the screens that we're proposing that cover the facade of the parking garage. And then you can see the red areas follow along with the detail pages we're going to show you. Are you zoomed out? Okay. So first of all, we have window details. This typical details, and there's a blow-up elevation, then there's wall section size details to the left of that, one shown in stucco, one shown in brick, and then we've got enlarged details of the head and sill of both of those conditions. It's a wood frame structure. Part of it is covered in stucco and the other part in brick, so we have, that's why we have both of those details. There are precast window sills at the first floor, and then we're using foam above the first floor where it can't be accessed or seen as well. We've got a detail at the top of the windowsill. When you point to that there, top windowsill, at the top of the window head, which is a C-channel steel. It's not really functional. It's just a decorative piece, but it's carried from elements of that we find in Ybor on some of the more modern buildings. Do you have the other board we can put up with those? We have, without showing you all these individually, you can get the other easel maybe and do it over here. Michael, just put it over there so they can have both up. We just put all the historic references for various components, which we reviewed a bunch of these in our PD package, but we just wanted you to have those for reference. So you'll see a lot of different elements there, which we can address in the question period if you'd like. I'm trying to go through quickly, hopefully not too quickly, with lots of time for questions. The next detail is a typical canopy detail. These, seen throughout Ybor and on new construction as well. And again, these are all faced in steel, another C-channel in the detail here. These are throughout the project, but this is just one example between windows and doors to cover the door head. They're connected to the building with turnbuckle or a fixed steel rod, just like everywhere. And these are not, these are solid components. Some buildings have sunscreens, but these are solid, this particular case. And then there's typical balcony detail. And we've used the proportions that you would see throughout Ybor, where the lower level seems to be much higher because the lowest level of the most buildings, especially along 7th, have a much taller ceiling. But anyway, those are round steel posts that support the balcony with a standard double top rail painted aluminum railing. And here is where you can see the gridding on the brick. Well, these are, we'll show you in another drawing, these are, those are actually recessed bricks every 2 feet on the center, just to give more of a rusticated base. Some examples of that you can see on the board. And then for the dividers between the units, we are currently showing a metal frame similar to those shown that we used on the Mill House project. Here we're currently showing a perforated metal panel for those, but are exploring lots of different materials there. This is a section through part of the entry system, just to show that roof overhang that's kind of hard to see on the plan. Excuse me. And brick columns there. We've got exposed beams tying back to the structural wall at that lower level, and really trying to create a tall colonnade. This is the narrowest part, about 6 feet, and then it gets to be about 12 feet at the corner. So there'll be a lot of shadow play happening there at that corner entry. Storefront fixed below and above. Some small details of the screening that we're proposing now on the parking garage, and we're actually proposing, if you glance at the elevation, these screens would cover all of the open areas of the garage. In between them would be, if you go around and point to the drawing, in between the screening would be solid columns, precast columns, so that light would shine through these, which would be diffused light because of the products we're using, and would give us kind of that a strong pattern of light, and it would emulate more of the manufacturing warehouse kind of structures that we see throughout Ybor, especially South Ybor. That hangs off from the wall, and you'll see in the section that hangs off from the wall. And then we have a recess for our parking sign above the entry. There's a quick little picture of a sample of the one type of metal perforations, but there's all kinds of types. Many are shown on the board to my right. And then this is the current design of the bridge, which is located at the 3rd floor. So the amenities being mostly 2-story, that main access is just above that, from the garage to left to right, to the north building. That north building being 3 and 4 stories. It's shown on the little drawing to the right, connected with at the 3rd level. But it's mostly a 4-story building there. We're trying to keep that element. We're not trying to make a feature of the bridge. We're trying to really play it down and have it be as transparent as possible. It is open air. It's covered, and it's made with all steel members. So we're trying to get those to be as thin as possible. And this is kind of where we are with that design. Our structural engineer needs to study it to make sure that we are handling wind loads properly with it. It may require more structure than we're showing, but this is kind of our hope. There's only about, at the worst case scenario, there's only about a 30-foot span, unsupported span. So we're hoping for something fairly thin. It's got a flat roof and typical railing. We may use, again, a special kind of railing that's perforated metal again, just to give it more of a sense of enclosure than just open pickets. Again, that's still being played with. And then we're just showing you one of the entries. This one happens to be at the Nick Nucio end of the north building. Trying to be reminiscent of the mini cigar factory, small little entries. It's all metal covered, and our steps in that location will be in a U shape like we've shown. And it'll have a similar canopy over it like all the other canopies on the project. The directions were to show wall sections last, so we pulled those out, and we'll just do that real quickly. I'm not sure if you're gonna be able to catch it all. Are you zoomed out? Okay, well, these are 4 stories, sections. Yep, and our building heights, there was some talk about whether we had changed our building heights since the PD, and we have not. Now, what has been done is, you know, the grading has been worked out. We didn't have that information during the PD time, so, and the measurement of the height is from, now the new code stipulates that it be measured from the code-required finished floor elevation, which in our case, we don't have a FEMA issue, so it is, typically it would be 18 inches above finished floor. We are working with the building department, and they have agreed to let us drop that so that we're not further taller than the grade change we have. And so we're down at about the height of Scott Street now, and those measurements are taken from that base flood elevation. But essentially, the 3-story sections are at 35 feet, the 4-story sections at 46 feet, and then the 5-story sections are at 58, almost 59 feet. As the building, let's show them this plan again. As the building heads south, this footprint is at a 30.5 elevation, which essentially is what Scott Street is, and so is this portion of the southern building. At this point, this section of the building drops down a foot to 29.5, and then this retail corner, because the property is sloping this way, I'm not sure how that looks on camera, but from this corner to this corner, this elevation is down at 27.5, but the floor lines remain the same. I'm not sure if I did that very eloquently, but so we showed you a lot of things quickly. We did not show you anything about lighting or signage or plantings, and we really didn't show you. We talked about materials and colors generically, but we really didn't bring any actual samples and talk about any specific materials. So we would love if there are pieces here in your, if you could craft your motion to either exclude or include components that we did or didn't cover well enough. That way, when we come back, we're all just looking at the new things that need to be covered and not repeating things that have already, just for the sake of everybody, this is a big project and we have to chop away at it. That concludes my presentation.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Vila, I'm staff with Historic Preservation. The request this morning is for a certificate of appropriateness for new construction for 316 apartments with site improvements. And as part of that, moving forward, the reconstruction of 4th Avenue and 5th Avenue. The streets that are being reconstructed are part of the PD. You do have the ability to comment on the materials as this moves forward. The request is for preliminary approval. There was quite a lot of information that was presented this morning. So as part of that information that was delegated this morning and at prior hearings through the PD process, just retain the information from the height and the width, the facade width, the setbacks and spacing and alignment have been discussed at the PD and then had been strengthened at the presentation this morning. As part of the preliminary approval on your staff report, I broke it down into 2 different sections to assist you. You could use this as a template to kind of craft a motion as you move forward. And I'll be here to assist in some dialogue if required. It was a very challenging project moving forward, so I wanted the applicant to provide a brief recap of the PD approval moving forward, and that was very successful. Some of the items for preliminary approval are to demonstrate the capability of the architectural characteristics submitted and the structures moving forward with the exterior materials that are being requested this morning. To discuss the changes in grade throughout the site and the modifications required to meet the pedestrian concerns. You know, she illustrated that it's a challenging site with the drop from the north to the south and how that would be incorporated into the project. There were some sections that were shown at the pedestrian level that kind of aided in the presentation. If there's any historic materials, as I alluded to in the introduction, that there should be a note that they should be retained and inventoried and returned back to the site. As far as historic references and some of the information that was provided, the corner features, the entrances, to provide historic references for those architectural features, the balconies and the canopies, the lower base, and the materials to the building itself were illustrated today in I think, a successful fashion. The connector is a feature that is kind of foreign to the historic district. She had mentioned that's still being reviewed at this stage. They gave us some indication of how that's going to look, but I don't think it's at a level to be finalized this morning. And with the garage as well, that's another feature that is needed for the size of the structure here, or the project in general. But I think when you get down to the nuances of what that's going to look like, it has not been defined. It has been, scratched on the surface at this point, but additional information is going to be required. As we move into final, some of the information kind of overlapped, but at the end of her presentation, she did state that the hardscape and the landscape is not at a level to be reviewed this morning. So that would be something that would be carried on to the next public hearing. She did have multiple sections showing the windows and the installation of the windows, some of the louvers. The lighting was omitted from this presentation. So that's the lighting throughout the whole project at the pedestrian level and how it incorporates into the project in totality. Also, how the lighting is going to be sensitive in nature as it emits from the parking garage and from the upper level as well, so that needs to be indicated. Total sign package has not been submitted at this time. And final color palette. Just going through the section, we have a template on page 4 of your staff report. The roof materials, all the exterior wall materials need to be called out in details on this large project. Final color selection. And any stairs. I believe the presentation this morning did a good overview of the project. Maybe that could be discussed today, and then with the outstanding items for final that need to be drilled down on as we look at it at the next public hearing. That concludes my portion here, and I'll be here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vila. Anyone here would like to comment from the audience, would like to comment on this project? Please identify yourself. Seeing none, we'll move on. We'll go ahead and ask you some questions. Mr. Wynn.
Let's see, so, I think the first thing is, as we move on to the next time that you present, it would be helpful if we could have maybe certain, the elevations could be broken down into smaller pieces, and we can actually see the textures and the materials actually applied. It's a little hard to use this, this key to try to apply something a little kind of far away, and the colors never print out right and that kind of stuff as well, so it's a little hard for for me to understand everything that's happening in the elevations currently, so we can have some large sections, especially when things like turn corners, material changes, that kind of thing would be very helpful to kind of see as we move to your final presentation to us. And that, obviously, you put a lot of work into this. It's very helpful to see all the historical precedents that you've kind of seen, and I think there's sort of a little bit of mismatch. Once again, I think it's just from seeing such a large elevation, seen at such a small scale, right? It's hard to see all those elements kind of come forward in terms of the historical precedents you've chosen to kind of highlight and sort of bring into the project, that kind of thing as well. And as always, like doing huge projects like this, especially with something like residential, you know, you get a typical, they're hard to do, right? They, you have certain requirements, you're usually very budget constrained as well with these types of things as well. And so that we have a condition where they often start to kind of look very similar to each other. So we appreciate any efforts that you can to kind of try to break that up a little bit as well, and try to just to highlight those historical precedents that you've worked so hard to kind of research. So those are sort of my initial impressions and sort of comments. I'm not sure what kind of questions I kind of had for you, unless you had some. I don't think you're at the point where you're showing us more detailed sections or elevations yet, where with those material changes or anything quite yet. So I don't think you have any of those to show. Correct. Yeah. So I guess I can move on. I might circle back and think of some more things.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here. So I'm trying to get a better, like I think we all are, and I try to get a better understanding of like the massing of the buildings and the change in materials. Is there a general thought process moving perhaps from the north side of the site down to the south? It appears that you're increasing height and changing the materials. I'm not sure if like all the brick is just on the south building of the site and none on the north. And I'd like to kind of go through maybe some heights in a little bit more detail of, you know, like on that east elevation on the north building there. Is that the only 3-story section that's there? I'd just like to understand your general.
Sure.
Oh,
Well, we didn't show this, we had this last time, but again, we'll use it for answers. So this is the drawing that we had for PD. So just remember that this is not included, this is W2. So this is the north building and the south building, and there's a 3-story section right here that drops down, again, to help accentuate this and to vary, you know, the heights a bit along Nick Nucio. This building, the north building, is almost exclusively covered in brick, 4 stories. There are some pieces which we are kind of connecting the wings with that have stucco on them. And in the back of the courtyard, we have stucco on those walls. Then on the south building, we're primarily, we're trying to graduate evolve the architecture to a more contemporary from the north to the south. And so in the south building, it's mostly 5 stories. There are a couple of areas where it's cut down to 4 stories, this creating a terrace overlooking Nick Nucio. The towers, all the corners of the buildings have the brick on them, and we can show you that on the elevation, but it's essentially these corners, these 4 corners, and then there's some components along Fifth Avenue that also have brick.
and that's a continuous water table on those buildings of brick, right?
The continuous water table exactly is the
But
first
like that
floor,
middle-
it goes
like that
around
middle
the,
section, the lighter section there, does that go to stucco or is that a different color brick?
this,
there?
are you talking about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's stucco.
Okay.
And then the base of the entire building, all 4 sides,
Okay.
is brick.
And then your vertical, you're using a darker brick for your
Yes, we're
stairways,
using a
elevators?
darker, kind of a gray-black, although the colors are hard to, every printer comes out differently, but yes, we're accenting those stair towers. Only one here on the front, we've concealed the other one to bring importance to this corner. And then there are those elements that flank the sides of the garage, the parking garage. And I can walk through those elevations with you. And then the heights, again, The 3-story sections, about 35 feet. The 4-story sections, which are here throughout this building and in this section of the south building, at 46 feet. And then the 5-story sections are at roughly 5810, so between 5810 and 5910. Again, this is showing, something flat, but the ground is actually, doing something a little different. So depending on where you measure that, there's a 2-foot change in first floor elevation from this corner to this corner. And so what we did was just make that retail space have a 2-foot taller ceiling by dropping it down.
So that your 5-story buildings are 58 feet plus or minus?
Yeah,
Okay. I saw
they're below
somewhere-
60.
Yeah, and I saw someplace that was 72 feet, one of the wall sections in our preliminary packet. I'm not sure if that's,
We need to fix that. I don't know where 72 feet would be.
yeah, I was a little concerned. I'm
Oh,
not
it
sure
might
where.
be, it might have been measured to
I think it was
even to a
more-
parapet is,
Yeah.
it might be measured to the top of a stair or something.
Okay, so
But
you'll have certain pop-ups that exceed that, basically, that don't count for your roof level.
that's right, by code, we are allowed to have some areas that pop up, but they'll be minimal.
And on your view here with the parking garage is completely behind parapet walls?
It is behind, it's concealed
Units,
this
yeah.
way. And on the elevations, you do see the short ends of the building on the south and the north. But
And you said in your
otherwise-
presentation that those are the same materials, the garage screening on both the south and the north? Of the
yes,
Enclosed, I shouldn't say enclosed.
right. This
sided
is a
part of the garage.
these are solid stucco columns between this open mesh, and the mesh can be, depending on the size openings you have, can be very transparent or not very transparent. On the last project we did, I think that the mesh was, too little was used and it was too transparent. And so we're learning. But we have, we give you an idea what we want to use there, but there's so many choices in that arena that we want to be able to have time to look at that with staff before we can present again to you.
Okay, and your parking garage is flush with the street edge there, with the sides of the buildings? It's not inset at all? I think there's,
Essentially, yes. Now, that's just based on, this is certainly not the first layout that we did on the project, and, we had it turned different ways, but this one seemed to allow us to conceal, to provide most parking and conceal as much as we could. There's a magic, the parking garage is sloped, the drive lanes are all sloped, you park on slopes. And there's a magic length of the building to get that slope to work out. So that is what the length of the building is based on. And that's why it goes edge to edge. I mean, we would have preferred to line the whole thing up, all 4 sides, but we couldn't get our parking in if we did that, or it would be 12 feet tall, or,
yeah.
12 stories.
I think you made a lot of good moves on all the way around the perimeter of the buildings of undulating that edge in every location except for the parking garage. So that, that's everywhere else has, you have parks inset in here between the buildings, you break up the massing of the building so that the teeth stick out and gauge that, I guess, Fifth Avenue, right?
Yeah.
And you do the same thing on Fourth Avenue on the south side, except for the parking garage. So there's a nice entry in there to the courtyard, nice undulation, breaking up the massing, which is in a more respective scale to Ybor City, as you know, and it's a lot of your historic examples that you've shown. But I guess I just kind of struggle with that parking garage coming out all the way to that street edge. This is a pedestrian street edge. It's the vehicular. It's your front entrance, if you will, for, coming in from the west. I'd like to see maybe if there's some way to set that back a little bit. I mean, it might not need to be a full move, but at least undulate that like you've done everywhere else on the project too. So I think that's worth exploring.
all right, okay.
And I know you have magic numbers, but on both directions.
No, yeah,
you know,
sure.
so,
No, we appreciate the comment, and we can certainly look at how we can address that.
And, I'm gonna send it on to John here in a minute. I like what you're doing with the grading on the east side here. I think that works pretty well. Can you discuss the pedestrian bridge, the materiality there? You said it, you know, it's gonna be a steel structure. You said it's a covered, is that like a standing seam metal roof, or is it, like a 5 feet crimp, or you just said it was like a flat roof?
It's a flat roof, yeah.
Okay, what's the material?
It's, you know, a TPO or whatever, you know, modified kind of roof would work. I mean,
Is that behind a parapet?
it's not behind a parapet, no. No,
Yeah, I think it'd be, I know you're trying to downplay it, but it might be a better use of staying with your metal palette there and instead of introducing something, because it looks like, you know, just metal deck and some insulation on top, so
yeah,
I think it, you know, express the materiality there. I mean, I think your historic precedents that you set on this board right here would lead you there. Same language that you're using for your awnings and your other steel structures.
yeah, sure,
would be
sure.
beneficial
I got you.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the recap and all of the effort and intensity that's gone into the project thus far. With that said, at this point, as we kind of transition into going from, you know, like the PD level analysis and approval and, you know, kind of proof of concept, yes, this all works on here, into what we'll need for final approval, the contrast between just the plain elevations, the straight up flat elevations that you have there and the three-dimensional is stark.
Yes.
With the 2D elevations, it's overwhelming in a way that's, you know, not easy to engage. It makes it very difficult to engage the project.
Sure,
The 3D versions of what you have are much more engaging, and I think what we'll need to see a lot more of
Sure.
moving forward. Because when I look at the 2D versions, I think that's a lot of the same color. I don't understand what you're going for. But you brought up the point, which is something that I feel like was crucial for me, that I can engage in and help, you know, provide feedback, which was from the north to the south, from W1 to W2, you're kind of stepping down in terms of historical references, where the northmost building and the northmost facade is potentially the most historically relevant or relatable. And then as you move down south into parcels that are not within the barrio and even under the control of perhaps another architect, we start to see over 3 different blocks the style evolve, as you said, which is fine. That opened the door for me on this presentation and how to go forward. So I think moving into the next level, when the next time we see you, I'd like to see, for everybody's sake, more 3D versions of what you're trying to accomplish. What does a northernmost version of a corner look like, the most historically relatable one? What references are you using for that one? What features are you trying to bring to play at a particular corner, say the northeast corner, the northwest corner? That way we can engage with that and say, okay, I understand what you're doing there. It's relatable, it's relevant, and here's the reference that you're using. You know, so tie it down for us as we move forward. The middle of the job, you know, as you move further south, the southeast corner, here's how we're, you know, playing off of the northeast corner. Here's where it evolves, becomes a little bit more modern, but still referential to the district. Here's, you know, here's the pieces and parts. Because in those 2D elevations, I don't see any of that. I mean, I can, now that you said it, I can start to,
you're right.
if I squint my eyes, I can kind of see it, but I can't engage with your process. And then, as we get to the furthest south one, which I know we're not evaluating currently, if you have notions of how that might inform what it is, although we don't have the ability to approve that or comment on it, it'd be nice to see where you're coming from. Because I see I see kind of the historic fabric kind of being screeded down through the project from north to south, and then kind of the modern approach that you want to bring into it being blended in from south to north. And I think that that gives you opportunities from the W2 parcel, which we're not talking about, to the southernmost building, where you have the parking garage. The parking garage is obviously the thing in here that is completely a fish out of water in the district, but we have them here. So what are the materials there? How does it thread through? And then when you get from the south building to the north building, what's the bridge? I don't think it has to be this kind of, we're trying to, you know, just not address it, not, you know, in terms of materiality and stuff. I think it can have a detailing, it can have, not necessarily be the focal point of the project, but you can take some of that modern approach through it. I don't think you have
Sure.
to, you know, use an old bridge that you'd find in the district per se. But that's just me finding a way to talk to you about the project, because those elevations, you know, there's not much to respond to. Yeah,
Right.
you're gonna have brick, yeah, you're gonna have stucco, okay. And you're gonna have some black metals, that's fine too. But on the views that we have here, the 3Ds, we'll wanna see those going forward. So like, and so specialized locations, corner entries, big moments where you're trying to offset the building, where you've, like on this top view here, the W1 from Nick Nuccio, where you've got the black stair tower there, kind of dividing that up. You know, I can see the scale and massing that you're going for there. I can see the brick, I can see the stair tower, I can see the stucco. And that all becomes a conversation that we can have about what's appropriate, what's scaled right, what's the detailing of one window in stucco versus the detailing in the brick. You know, we can see in some of your wall sections that you're pushing the brick one back in to expose it, and the stucco one might not be so pronounced. That's fine. Those are all places where we need to go next time. Signage is a whole other approval that you need, but it'd be great to see, you know, like here you've got renderings that say signage, which is helpful. You know, okay, what do you consider the important corners? And then architecturally, what's going on there? You know, in that bottom right one, I can see, and that looks like it's W2. So but again, it's the modern one that we're not talking about, because it's not part of the conversation. But how does that inform what you're doing along these other masses as you break them up? I think that, to Commissioner Simmons' point about the parking edge and how you've kind of run out of space on the site, you know, there's a possibility that, and it looked like they were all handicap spots along that southernmost edge of the parking garage. You know, you could potentially, I'm going to say, eliminate spaces and push that face in, so that, you know, you maintain the depth that you need for the ramps and the landing and the turnaround, but maybe there's some relief on the pedestrian edge. And again, I see that whole parking as an opportunity to kind of deviate from a historically,
Sure.
you know, rigid palette. You know, you've got concrete, you've got metal panels, you've got something that can start to thread through the rest of the project, and kind of, as we get to the north elevation, you never see it again, right? But as you get more southerly, it's more modern. Those are my comments, and I appreciate your presentation, because you, by indicating that you wanted to evolve the kind of the style from historic to modern, that allowed me to understand where you're headed, and hopefully we can have a lot more detailed conversations next time.
Thank you. First of all, I appreciated the fact that you set the tone and positioned everything for us in the beginning, so that I could understand where we were at on the site. It is a huge site, and we got to track where we are. I love what you requested in regards to the 3D for next time, because that will help me to, you know, look at it and be able to define my questions and grasp what I don't understand or what I have questions on. I like what's happening here. I too like how you've gone from the historic transitioning into the modern, and I appreciated that because I was afraid we were gonna have a line where it stopped. So I appreciate the transition. That's all I have. I think next time we're gonna have quite a lengthy conversation and be ready for that.
And I think that's kind of the general point. We're trying to, there's a lot of information. We've seen it once for the PD. We've seen it here. The elevations are just tough. I mean, I did the same thing with the printout here, the key plan, trying to follow where everything was going. So the renderings really help to define those characteristics. And I know
Sure.
we've seen them once, but it'd be good to see them a little bit more specific. You know, I think, you know, trying to understand that on the north side of the block that you have brick there, I wasn't getting that fully comprehending, and, you know, do you have that, you know, pediment banding of the inset brick on that building or not? Some of that would show up in the renderings, and that, you know, that, which is a nice detail, you know, and it carries a lot of weight, it sets the base for the building, and there's precedent, obviously, for that. You know, German American Club comes to mind pretty quickly. You know, and I think you know, be careful on this, but like the pedestrian bridge, I mean, Central Ybor has some good examples, like, even though it's a modern interpretation of how they did that, that would give you
Sure.
some clues there too. But that's an important element, I think. It's a small element, but I think it also ties into your mobility, your parking garage and your transportation, and maybe that all has the same language that you can tie in through the project. Let's see, I'd also like to see a little bit more detail. I think part of the motion is that we're reviewing a CA for new construction, site improvements, and 4th and 5th Avenue reconstruction. I didn't really see too much on 4th and 5th Avenue reconstruction. Maybe it'd be helpful to see some, you know, street sections or some renderings inside those streets to see what's going on. I kind of see what you want to do on the site plan, but, you know, and I think there's a, you know, huge opportunity, obviously, you know this, you know, between the courtyards that you guys have, you know, designed, and integrate that into the street, and that back and forth language, and that translates into the buildings jutting in and out as well. On your elevations and a lot of your drawings, you show heads over the stucco, in the stucco, when you're using a stucco detailing. I think I'm seeing the heads showing up there, but when you look into your wall sections and your window head details in a stucco condition, I don't think they show up there. I'm not sure if that's, I don't think you want to use the steel C-channel there. I think that's more of your brick detail, but it just looks like the stucco just comes down flat and goes into the window, so I think it's a more historically sensitive detail with the sill to have it a pronounced head.
Okay.
And it's kind of hard to tell if you have that, but I think I saw that you do have some head punch outs.
Yeah. But we may be showing that as metal. Yeah. I think, yeah, that's going to stick out from the building, so. Yeah, we need to modify that probably
Number
just to be something
Yeah.
flat there.
Yeah, if there is something there. So here you show, yeah, you show the steel over there, but you don't show it in the detail, so. Detail number 4.
Oh, yeah. See,
So I don't know.
Copy paste.
And I think steel is appropriate there,
Yeah.
you know, or if you need to do it out of, you know, stucco thickened edge or something, that's probably appropriate too. And thank you for clarifying the heights and the materials. You know, I think we're all trying to get our heads around.
It's a lot to
for
put
when
into
you're not
one
dealing with it
presentation.
Day in, day out, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think one of the aluminum or steel canopy details over one of the doors, at one of the entry doors, you showed the 2 like tie rods going back to one location. I don't know if you really want to, that's an appropriate-
It's the last,
yeah, when it goes into a 1 point,
the one, that's kind of the cigar factory one.
yeah, I think you probably want to straighten those up and keep them parallel.
Well, we were trying to do something cute and
Yeah, right there.
do the,
And that,
yeah, the roof, I mean, the actual roof is supported by columns. So we were just looking at, you know, mimicking maybe a roof that you would see on a cigar factory, but
Yeah.
it may not be as strong as,
Yeah, you can
Ju-
do that on W-2.
Yeah, to footnote off of what we had mentioned before, for example, this is one of the conditions that caught my eye
Yeah,
during your presentation as something that was not appropriate and we would need to probably talk about, but I have no idea where it is. And so it'd be good to see, you know, what's this one compared to the other one, because you're, as a single sheet, there's lots to talk about just here.
yeah,
Right, so, and probably got, you know, 35 of those types of different details throughout the project, that we need
yeah,
to
sure,
consider.
sure, there, yep,
So that, again, goes back to my point for just bring all your, special moments that you want to talk about and how they're detailed, so that we can just run through them. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. You know, because there's two different things, you know, you don't need the tie rods there because it's supported by the structure.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's as appropriate for the, you know, having the columns there in that particular location either, but it's your design, but, you know, I think that's, and I think you guys detail out a lot of these plans with the key plans and show where things are.
Sure.
Maybe just during your presentation, you know, call that out a little bit. Okay, we're on this elevation on the north block, and this is our entry element, so, I know you have limited time, but we'll give you plenty of time, so I think
Okay.
you'd rather, you know, have a simplified information of detailed areas as we go along. But I think this is, you know, excellent progress. It's good to see all the progress and the design efforts here. So I think you're going in the right direction, and I think, you know, street sections, the roof of the pedestrian walkway, a little concerned about the, you know, if you're gonna, on your parking garage, if you're gonna have, light poles up there, maybe make sure that, you know, have those lower so they don't stick up too
Yeah.
far. And I think Bainbridge, they're probably a little high, and maybe
Yeah.
try to scale that back a little bit. One other note that I noticed on here, I thought we clarified waiver 3 on your PD, the percentages on our recommendation. I'm not sure if that translated all the way through to city council or not. I think it was, it's on whatever that PD sheet. If you just take a look at that, 'cause there's two different numbers that you were asking for a reduction from.
I'm sorry, I didn't
It's
understand that.
waiver number 3
Waiver number 3,
on your PD.
yeah. Do you have the PD? Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I'll be able to read it, but,
Yeah. Just on, I think it's a tree reduction on a wooded lot, or, but just take a look at that just as a side note. There's two different numbers of requested percentage decrease.
regarding retention or trees?
Number 3.
Number 3, okay.
Anyone else?
I'll see, we'll look into it. I don't see what,
Yes, I'm sure it's small. Do you have any other questions? Questions? Okay, we're gonna go, we don't have any other questions. You have a few minutes to summarize or, any of your comments, thoughts, and then we're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing.
I will just say I really appreciate everybody's time and consideration and the input on how to chop away at this, because it is a lot. And I know that 3D is always easier to understand than the 2D. So we appreciate all of your input, and we'll do our best to show you some of those things next time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gaines. We're gonna go ahead and close the public hearing now, and we can have some discussion amongst ourselves.
I don't have anything for amongst ourselves. You guys covered a lot of it, and I'm looking forward to next time and what we see in the 3D in more detail.
Yeah, I think that we're setting ourselves up for a marathon review next time. But it's very, it'll be important to get all those details, you know, on record, presented, reviewed, and also kind of documented, so ultimately staff will have the direction that they need, both explicit and on their own review to be able to kind of bring this project to fruition.
I was just gonna say, I also think what we kind of have defined here today sets the cadence for future presentations as they start to come through.
No, I agree. I think John and Rich always say things more eloquently than what and say what I'm trying to say a lot of times. And so they took the words right out of my mouth for this time for what I would like to see next time as well.
Yeah, I think this is nice to see more detail than what we've seen in the past with the PD. I think you're certainly heading in the right direction. I think the general feeling is, everything's, palatable and appropriate in a general sense. We'd like to see some more details in certain areas with historic pretext. And I think just the sheer scale of this, it'd be helpful to have additional information to help clarify what we're looking at, where things are, and but I like your general progression of working from the north to the south into, towards the boundary, and I think everything's in a historically, appropriate manner under our purview. So just looking forward to more detail, getting a lot of those issues figured out. Probably need to provide a little bit more information on doors and windows, making sure that we're seeing what those look like
Sure.
for the entry doors and the windows that you're proposing to use there. I think you said vinyl, vinyl clad, and a lot of those are going to have, 2/2 or 4/4, and get into that level of detail
Yeah.
as well.
Can I
Mr. Chair, if I could interject for just a moment as you're considering the type of motion you're going to be making, because we do have some timing issues that we have to consider particularly with this case, and I'm not sure what the design team is contemplating. What I would suggest, rather, if you're moving to a continuance or to a preliminary or whatever the motion may be, is that you set the date currently for February the 22nd of 2022, with an understanding that we're going to need to discuss the proper placement of this case. It may not actually occur on that date, but for the maintenance of the notice, we would want to establish the date as February 2022, and then I will discuss options with the design team. If we need to continue it again in February to a different date, then we'll work through that. I do want to let you know that both in February and March, we have very full agendas. I see a project of this size not being able to be, shoehorned into those agendas. So we may be looking at calling a second additional meeting for this and perhaps another case.
Okay, and I think, to kind of plan Dennis, continue on Dennis's thoughts, I think in a general sense, in some past cases that we see, if we move to a preliminary versus a continuance here, I'm not sure if there's a preference by the applicant, that we don't tie ourselves to say, a lot of times it's like, okay, this was already approved in the prior hearing and we can't go back and touch it, and I don't want to set us up for that position because there's a lot of moving elements here. I think everything's still open for discussion, but on a general sense, I think the general, massing scale materials is good. We just need more detail of how these certain aspects are applied to the project and where. And it all seems pretty consistent with the PD, so I'm not sure how exactly we communicate that in our motion.
Kamaria Pettis-Mackle from the City Attorney's Office. So obviously, Commissioners, whether or not the continuance is on the table is up to the applicant. But if the board is considering doing a preliminary approval regarding this application that as presented, to ensure that there is a flush out of the discussion of the conditions that you would like this applicant to address moving forward. But I just wanted to clarify that any discussion about a continuance is solely up to the applicant, okay?
Can I chime in? The other thing that I would like to kind of throw out there, and this goes to what you were talking about, Dennis, if there is going to be a second meeting, I would request, and I'm assuming you would as well, that number one, you let us know as soon as possible so we can at least put a placeholder on our calendars, because these projects coming through are going to be big and take time. So it would just be something that I recommend, and I don't know if we can ask this, but I like when these projects come through together so we can begin to see the pieces as they fit the entirety of the project. Am I making sense? You're looking at me like I'm crazy. Maybe you just got your mask on, I can't tell. No, I'm
well,
looking at him.
No, no.
I'm looking at
Yeah,
you, buddy.
I'm not
you.
Projecting anything by my
Okay.
look, but,
Oh, well, maybe I better put my
I mean,
glasses
yeah,
on
we-
so I can hear you. Oh, Lord, there you are.
I mean, we obviously have codified requirements for when the cases are placed on the agenda based on their application submission dates, but we try to manage them logically when we can.
Yeah,
I am contemplating some things with this particular case, but, and we will definitely reach out to you and probably poll you like we do many times to determine what an appropriate supplemental meeting date might be.
yeah.
But, you know, that thought kind of occurred to me during the presentation, and I still need to kind of work out a lot of those specifics. So we'll definitely be reaching out to you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because to be able to put even a placeholder on my work calendar would be fantastic, so I can at least reserve it for you and for the BLC, and then if we end up not using it, great, I get it back. It's a treat. So, just a little 2 cents there. And you know I always have an opinion, and you know I'm always pleased to share it.
Okay, well, let's take a stab at a motion. Move to grant preliminary approval for the drawings documents presented in this public hearing in BLC 22-59 for the property located at 1015 Lily White Court with the following conditions. 1, the applicant will provide 3D versions of the features for consideration and discussion next time, with historic references and other references to proposed additional developments that may or may not be part of this project, the W2. 2, applicant will provide a complete site package as referenced in staff findings, with emphasis on the redevelopment of 4th and 5th Avenues, renderings and appropriate collateral for that. 3, wall section details as described and as we've discussed will be refined and presented again for discussion of the detailing. 4, bridge detailing will be finalized for approval or for review for approval and the design presented. Garage detailing will be finalized and presented for review, including how the garage interfaces with the southernmost portion of the W1 property. 6, all final approval requirements as stated in staff report will be provided for the next review cycle. 7, historic materials will be retained as described in the staff report, and notions for the retention will be presented next time for final review and consideration. Did I get that?
Yeah, I'd just like to, for the garage, talk about the setbacks on both sides.
Okay.
You know, I think,
Okay, and number 8, the garage, the relationship of the garage to both sides of the property line will be presented and developed, and opportunities for relief off of the property lines will be explored and offered up next time. Again, just to restate, all of the conditions that are described here for final approval and staff report will be brought back for consideration as described in staff report. I think I've reiterated that. Including but not limited to the hardscape landscape, the additional architectural details, complete sign package, and final material and color palette for approval.
following conditions to the
Yeah, well, to the February 22nd, 2022 public hearing, that will be confirmed by staff, but we've got it noticed, at 9 a.m.
That's February 20th, 2022.
February 22nd?
February 22nd.
February 22nd.
February 22nd, 2022. 2/22/22.
Yeah.
Ooh,
We have
Are
a
you-
second?
I'll do a second.
And then could you have the applicant,
Yep.
say whether or not they approve?
So you've heard this is based a preliminary approval with a number of conditions that have been presented and discussed today at this public hearing. Are you okay with those conditions as stated?
Yes, we are.
Motion, okay. On the record, the applicant agrees. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of said motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you very
Congrats, we'll
much.
see you next month. Thank you. And seeing no more cases on the agenda, we are adjourned. Thank you all.